Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of SKILLSeries Live. We are here today with Jeb, and he is going to be teaching us about leather work. But first of all, do some housekeeping. We've got this series running. It's live on Facebook. It's live on YouTube. You can watch it on either of those platforms. If you watch on our website, make sure you're not using the little help bubble down there in the corner, because that'll get you talking to our customer service and office people, aka Noelle, and she's probably not there right now. Maybe she is, I don't know. But that won't help you interact with Jeb. If you want to talk to him during this episode, use the comments on Facebook, use the comments that are live on the YouTube video. And otherwise, I think that's it. If you have questions, we can see them come through here in our platform. We can broadcast them on the screen. We'll throw them out to Jeb. And so feel free to ask questions throughout the whole thing. We'll try and work them in as we can, and we'll manage all that. And otherwise, Dustin, why don't you tell us a little bit about Jeb?
Okay, I'm going to read this from memory. So disregard my eyes and as I fumble through this. And then I'll give you the unofficial who Jeb and TogetherMade is. Jeb is the founder and designer behind a DIY craft kit and supply company called TogetherMade. His professional background is in program management and artificial intelligence, but his passion is in creating with his hands and teaching wood and leather craft. In 2018, after years as a hobbyist and enthusiast, Jeb started designing and manufacturing high-end craft kits as TogetherMade, with the goal of introducing others to the joy and beauty of quality handmade goods. That is Jeb and TogetherMade. Now, the unofficial answer of Jeb and TogetherMade, Jeb and TogetherMade and Wazoo were put together originally because Jeb had worked with the Pathfinder School or the Self-Reliance Outfitters to develop some products, and that was in conjunction with us. He developed a patch, a repair patch that worked really well with our hat, and we got together after that, and we've worked together since. The product that's already out on the market that Jeb has made for us is the cash patch, the leather cash patch. It's a leather version of our cash patch that has a pocket on the inside. It's a very, very crafty product. The original one was made out of vinyl and was probably a lot easier to make than the handmadeness that this one was made in. And after that, seeing how much time, attention to detail, and craftiness he put into it, it's led to us wanting to work with Jeb in a lot of different faculties, facilities, ways. And we actually got him to do the more recent run of our Bridal business cards. It's a product we've had for several years, but we just revamped them and we brought them to Jeb because he's not only a great leather worker, he also does lasers and lots of other things too. And there's probably a lot of other products that we come out with Jeb as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeb. And if there's anything I missed, Jeb, that you want to talk about, you're welcome to introduce yourself or introduce Owen behind the camera or whatever you want to do. But the rest, we're going to just let you run with it, and then we'll interrupt you in the most inconvenient times possible to answer any questions that we or anybody listening in might have.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me, guys. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a high-level walkthrough, and we'll go through kind of what tools do what and how to get started. And I approach this from a rather non-traditional way because I did start in woodcraft and ended up really loving leathercraft. So a lot of similar concepts, but we'll walk through today kind of how to approach it. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for coming today, folks. And I hope you're all doing well out there. And so here we go. So I wanted to answer this question that Nick sent up front, which is how does leatherworking or what does it mean for self-reliance? And I think if you can work with leather, the fundamentals, I think you can make really interesting tools and products that you can use in your own outdoor adventures, hiking, camping, etc. So just some examples of things, sheaths, collars. So these are all things that we've made. Some of them are commercial, some of them are things that we've made just for our own use. This is a compass case. So if that's something that you're interested in, that's a product or a piece that's relatively easy to make. Knife cases and sheaths, once you have the fundamentals down, they come pretty straightforward. Wallets, this is a wallet that I was working on with Right in the Rain before all this COVID stuff, and You know, so this is daily carry, things that you're just going to use on a daily basis. So I think, you know, for self-reliance, you're making your own belts, you're making your own little bags, you're making holsters. I think that's a really handy tool set. Field repair skills. So you're out in the field and something breaks. Well, if you know how to do the saddle stitch, you have some harness needles and some of these basic tools in your kit, you're going to be able to get yourself going again. And then I think just pride in using your own gear. I think it's really a rewarding thing to have made something with your own hands and then get to use it in the field. Also, you get to plan and make stuff when you're not able to get out in the field. So if you're, you know, at home, it doesn't really take a lot of space to do leathercraft. So just a little bit about how we've approached this, because we do kits, and the way that I've been building out the product line over the last couple of years is trying to approach it from a progressive learning standpoint. So I'm just going to show you a couple of kits, and then I'm going to walk you through materials, high level. I'm going to walk you through essential tools, and then I'm going to do a demo where we build one of these kits.
That's great.
But here's just a few examples of a progression. So this is a journal kit. It's made for write in the rain journals. Holds a pen in the tab, holds some business cards. The way that this kit comes, we cut all the pieces and all the stitch holes are cut, and you learn how to do the saddle stitch, and you learn how to burnish the edges, and you learn sort of the basics. But the result is you've got straight stitches and you've got a beautiful, useful journal that's going to last you a lifetime. So that's sort of a step one, is learn how to saddle stitch, learn how to work with the materials. The kit that we're going to do today is sort of a step two kind of kit, where we're punching holes. There's a teeny bit of sewing in this kit, you'll see, but this is our belt kit. So these templates are for laying out your, I guess I can use this camera. These templates are for laying out your holes. There's a punch that comes with it. All the hardware is there, and then the leather. So the idea is that, you know, the first kit, it comes with the needles and everything you need, and you're just going to follow the instructions and make it and decide if you enjoyed it or not. If you enjoy it, the next kit has another tool in it, and you're just sort of progressing to that next step where you're taking a little bit more responsibility for the project. And then this latest kit that we just came out with is a knife sheath for the Buck 110, and this guy, it comes with the Smith's leather bomb, which is pretty awesome. Comes with this stitching chisel, and in this kit you're actually cutting your own stitch holes with that chisel. So you're going to mark those lines, you're going to cut those holes, and that's just another step. And so after you've kind of done several of these, you've got something that's functional, that works, that's beautiful, and that you like to use. But you've also learned how to do the stitching, how to punch the holes, and really at that point you've got the gear you need to kind of go and just make anything. So, you know, if you wanted to make a card wallet, one of these, this is one of our kind of entry-level card wallet kits. But if you want to make one of those from scratch, once you kind of progress through this set of projects, you'd be able to do that no problem. So yeah, that's kind of how we've approached it.
It's really neat the way you laid that out, Jeb, as far as like teaching the basics of just a step-by-step method almost. You give them the tools to start off, learn a technique, and then from there they can expand to another technique, and each one seems to come with its own tools to help through that progression. So it's just really innovative the way that you set that up to not only give people a cool product at the end, but to actually teach them a skill as they're doing it.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think what I really like about it is that you're getting something that's useful and functional as you go, and you're building out your kit progressively. So it's not like, oh, I'm going to walk you through a bunch of tools today, and it's not like you need to buy all those on the first day. You can kind of get, you know, dip your toes in and see if you like it, and then progressively build out. So hopefully that kind of takes off over time here with us. All right, so materials high level. So you can kind of go down a rabbit hole with this, but we're going to talk about leather a little bit up front. I think it's a bit intimidating at first. There's just different types, and it's pretty confusing. So I think the first question you ask is, what am I making? And if you're making kind of holsters and cases and these sorts of things, it's pretty straightforward. Just assume that you can go with a veg tan leather. There's two basic types of tanning out there. There's the veggie tan, which is a vegetable kind of plant-based process that takes a while, but they have a lot of body, a lot of strength in veggie tan product. And then there's mineral tanned or chrome tanned is the most common, and that would be a softer product that might be a little bit more colorful just in terms of dyes and stuff. But I stick to the veg tanned. Everything we do here is with Wickett and Craig leathers. So in any case, so I recommend going with veg tan. This is a bridal leather. You recognize this from a lot of belts. This Wickett and Craig dark brown bridal is the leather that Filson uses in all their, not all their, but uses typically in their belts and things. It's a really pretty classic looking leather. So, you know, this is what we use in all of our stuff is the Wickett and Craig veg tan. This is a skirting leather. It's not so stuffed with waxes. And the thing you can do with a skirting that you can't necessarily do with a harness or with a bridle is that you can wet mold it. So if you were going to build a case and you wanted to wet form it, you can get this wet and form it to an object. It also can be tooled quite easily. So I think that's a great starting option. And then this is just another example of a veggie tan leather. And this is a harness leather, a buck brown harness. So we actually offer belt kits in these leathers, and then a couple other colors of bridal, and they turn out great. And then most of our other kits are done in this skirting. Things you need to know are just like, what's it going to do when it gets wet? So just for example, this is the journal that I use when I'm coaching soccer. It's made out of a bridle, and it's getting wet all the time because we live in Seattle. Whereas maybe another product, if it weren't treated, like if I took this harness and I didn't have some sort of protective coat on it, saddle soap or something, and it got wet, it would stain. So they're just, you know, things to learn like that. As far as cuts and grades go, this is really confusing, but
so before we jump into that real quick, Jeb, the three types of leather you were just talking about, the skirting, the bridle, and the harness, those are, I guess, in a different order, the skirting, the harness, and the bridle, kind of in progressive levels of treatment with oil or something to saturate them. So they're kind of increasingly water repellent and not as formable.
Right. The more kind of wax and oil is in there, the less kind of moldable it is. So the skirting and tooling leather, typically, you know, you can dye them. Even if this one's already dyed, you can dye it again. But then you'd probably want to seal it with something. Whereas the harness and the bridle is hot stuffed, or it has a lot of wax content in it. And you're not going to dye that or change its color. I mean, it'll break in, it'll have a nice patina over time, but sort of different purpose. And really it's more about weight, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. And if you have some specific function, like if you're going to wet form it, all of these for basic projects, for wallets and these sorts of things, all of these veggie tan leathers are great for it. Like, you know, this wallet's bridle, this wallet is skirting. This case is harness. But you know, any one of our projects, we don't have any wet forming projects right now. So we used to do a knife case and wet forming for our wooden pocket knife, but we're not doing that product right now. So all of those examples I just gave are veggie tan leathers. I don't have examples of chrome tan. Chrome tan's a little bit cheaper. It can be, some of them are still quite expensive. That process is less environmentally friendly. It's not a natural process. I don't use them. I don't use leathers with a lot of oil in them either, because we do a fair amount of laser cutting, and the lasers hate like those soft leathers with oil in them. It just kind of like doesn't cut right. So
I imagine it smokes a lot too.
Yeah, it just doesn't work. And those are the things that, like, if you don't know, you just kind of have to make some mistakes and figure it out. what I'm trying to do with TogetherMade is take like the majority of those mistakes off the table, so that by the time you're making those kind of real independent decisions and maybe bigger purchases, you kind of know your way around a bit more. So as far as cuts go, leather, when we buy it, comes inside, so it's a half a cow. There's a bunch behind me, and then there's a whole rack above, but it would come in a big roll. This is, you know, half a cow, but this would have been quite a bit wider, but it comes like this, and there's different parts to the cow, obviously, and they do different things. So when you think about backs, so the top back of the cow versus the belly, the back tends to be stiffer, the belly tends to be kind of softer, less body. When we cut our belts, we cut them out of these full sides and we use the backs, and then there's a certain point where I just don't think it makes sense to use anymore, and we get rid of the bellies and use them for something else. So,
Jeb, when you talk about the stiffness of it, does that also equate or have any relation with the thickness of the leather? The back is
not necessarily. I'll tell you about the weights in a second.
Okay.
That's more just about what kind of when you're picking, you know, what does the neck versus the back versus the belly.
So leather, the same. It could be the same kind of tanning and
same cow
and same thickness of the leather. But it could, if it came from the belly, it would be a little more supple, and if it came from the back, it'd be a little bit more.
Correct. So like I wouldn't make belts out of bellies. Like they're just not as much strength in them. So when we cut, we stop at the belly, or we just buy cuts that don't have the belly on them. So, you know, for getting started, this is kind of a lot of information. You're really probably not going to need to make those decisions, but don't buy a bunch of bellies if you're trying to make belts, I guess is my point. So grades, everybody does grades a little differently. Wickett and Craig, who is our supplier, they have a standard grade and a utility grade and a special grade. In sort of the more marks, the lower the grade. The deal is with the full grain leather, where they're not kind of sanding the top layer off. They're basically removing the fur, the hair, and then they're doing the tanning. Like there's just going to be natural you know, blemishes and marks and those sorts of things, and they grade it out so that, you know, their higher grades have less of that, but you can see that the figuring in it and that sort of stuff. So whereas, you know, in a leather that's kind of been maybe sanded down quite a bit, or they've kind of done a lot of finish work to make it more uniform for a couch or something like that, that's just a different process altogether. So the grades are kind of manufacturer to manufacturer. They talk about them differently, but they talk about full grain and top grain and split grain, and everything we use is full grain. The top grain is a layer down from that, and that's usually that's usually just called top grain. And then the splits, or the stuff that's beneath those layers, they just kind of maybe call that genuine leather, but that's not something that you'd want to kind of make a case out of, or those sorts of things. So just stick with Vegetan leather, and you're going to, in a skirting or a bridal and those sorts of things, and you'll end up with great leather.
And that's full grain, right? Is what you're looking for?
Correct. Yeah, and it's like people kind of mess with the terminology a little bit, but you know, full grain Vegetan, you know, skirting, you're going to end up with something good. And if you're going to wet form, you definitely want to do that. If you're making a belt and you just want something that has, you know, a little bit higher wax content, then a bridal, full grain Vegetan bridal.
And now,
I'm sorry if that was confusing. It's just a confusing kind of scene.
No, it's all, I think, helpful background to get started in this. But there's also suede within there somewhere, right?
Yeah, and that would be kind of, you know, after the top had been removed. The back of this is sort of suede-y.
Okay.
And if you had just split this and left the roughness, that would be kind of the suede part.
Okay,
We don't
so
use that
like
in any of our
a chunk of leather that doesn't have, I guess, what you would otherwise call the top grain.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the other thing is, when you order, you know, you have to kind of learn things over time. Like when you order and it's been cut down, is the backside being refinished, or are they leaving it kind of furry and from the split? And so everything we order, the backs have been refinished. So they'll split this. This is a wallet, and it's 6 ounce, but it started out as thicker, and then they refinished the backside. This backside hasn't been refinished. So if it's something where you care about the surface, the backside, you kind of need to know if the backside's refinished. Okay, so thickness. So thickness is sort of independent from all that. So it's typically leather thickness is, okay, what is the thickness of the skirting? Okay, so we'll go through that right now. So for things like belts, you're going to want to be in 10 to 12 ounce. So leather thickness is measured in ounces. You can look at a conversion to millimeters, and it sort of ranges. But a 10 to 12 ounce is kind of what you'd make a belt out of. This is a thicker leather here. It's probably a little 12 plus, 12, 13 ounce. So those are for your kind of heavier duty applications. Sheaths might be in a 7 to 10 ounce. So if you look at this kit, these side pieces are 6 ounce leather, so they're a little bit thinner, and the outside is a 9 ounce. Once I go above 9 ounce, the snaps stop working so well. So that's why I stopped there. But that's a good thickness for this case. It's stiff. It's got good body. It's not getting all floppy. And this one's been tooled quite a bit. But yeah, so that's kind of the idea is that if it needs to be stiffer and heavier, you're going to go with a heavier weight. 10 to 12 for belts, 7 to 10 for sheaths. These journals are 5 to 6 ounce. And then wallets, you can make a wallet in a 5 to 6 ounce, but you might want to go down to a 4 to 5. And if you're making like a wallet with a bunch of different pockets inside, those might be even thinner. Once you get inside.
What's the thinnest they go on the leather weights?
What's that?
What is the thinnest that they go?
Well, you can get down to a 1. Like Wickett and Craig, the thinnest I've bought there is like a 2, and that would be like for a very fine component to a project. None of our kits have, that I remember. Maybe the old watch kit we did like had a cover piece that was thin like that. But most of the stuff we're doing is 5 to 6 ounce for things like journals and card wallets. This wallet's 5 to 6 ounce. This compass case we did in 6 ounce. This is one of the products we did with Pathfinder School, the compass case. So I did 4 ounce on the sides, so it's kind of springy. And then I did 6 ounce for the main case body. So that just gives you an idea. Like, I wouldn't make a belt out of 8 ounce. Like, I just wouldn't do it. But okay, so I think that's enough there. Where to buy stuff? This is confusing, and when I first walked into the leather store, it was like I just didn't know what to get. So here's kind of what my recommendation is A, buy some kits, then you'll kind of have an idea of what you're working with. We're selling belt blanks. We don't sell leather, like sides or anything like that, but we do sell the belt blanks. And so if you're interested in belt blanks, we have several different versions. That's funny. I have one of those kits. Didn't realize you made it. That's funny. Cool. But local shops, go in. If you know what you're asking for veggie tanned, like we talked through, bridal or skirting or tooling leather. I like Buckle Guy. I think they typically stock really nice stuff. Tandy and Weaver both stock nice stuff. Rocky Mountain Leather. There's lots of different suppliers out there if you want to buy it. Typically, a square foot of this costs about $20. So that gives you an idea of like,
wow,
it's actually kind of the same price. So an 1.5 inch belt blank that's 55 to 60 inches will cost you $22 or so, 21, somewhere in that ballpark. And a square foot of this same leather will cost you, $19.99. So when you get a kit that has pieces that add up to more than that, obviously we have a different price structure, but we're kind of saying look, we want you to work with really high quality materials, and experience that, and then you know what they're like to work with, and you know how to order it moving forward. So those are places that I've ordered leather from. Again, all of our stuff is Wickett Craig Direct now. Okay, so that's that. Questions on that before I move on to tools, and then time check. I think we need to get cruising.
Dude, no questions rolling in yet. We've been passing them on as they're coming in.
Okay, super. So cutting, joining, detail work and finishing. It sounds a lot like woodworking, and it really is a similar concept. So,
Can you say that real quick?
What's that?
Can you say those steps one more time?
Yeah, so we're cutting, and we're taking pieces and we're cutting them down based on a pattern. And then we're joining them either by sewing or some functional hardware. And then we're doing detail work like, embossing or tooling or burnishing. And then we're finishing with finishing the edges or top coating them in something. So like, those are the same kind of basic steps as you would take in a woodworking project. And a lot of it just has to do with knowing what materials to use, knowing how to work with the tools you have, what tool to use in what circumstance. And so I'm going to walk you through here what I think is kind of the essential set of tools. There's a lot of videos about this out there, and I think they all generally kind of agree. But I just wanted to make sure before I did this that it actually worked. And so I made this pistol rig. We were camping last weekend, and I made this pistol rig just with the tools that I'm going to walk through now. So this is a pretty complicated looking project, with a holster, that's, I didn't wet form this, but I could, with a holster. This is very thick material I'm going through. We've got this detail work in the buckle and around the edges. And so, these tools I'm about to show you with a template, you can make something like that with these tools. And if you'd gone through several of our kits in advance, you'd kind of have the basics. The only thing that I had to do here that didn't, get taught in one of our kits is the cutting out of the template. So we'll do some kits where you have to start cutting. I just haven't got to that level yet. All right, so I'm going to go through tools.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
So cutting mat. So I've got one in front of me. I'm going to move this out of the way.
Dustin, did you have a question?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay, Jeb?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So you made that actually while you were out camping?
Yeah, I mean, we were in a cabin, and but I didn't use any power tools or anything. I just had a template that I brought with me that I bought from Tandy because I just wanted to make this cowboy rig. It's actually a present for somebody. But I wanted to make one, and I'd always wanted to, so we were just kind of out for a few days, and I thought, well, I got this video coming up. Let me just see if I can make this thing with the minimal set of tools I can.
Cool.
We got a question. Are your kits available in the UK? Do you ship internationally?
Yeah, we ship to UK. We've shipped to Australia, and I don't know. We ship quite a bit to Canada. So yeah, we ship international. It's not a problem.
Very cool.
Okay, so cutting mat is a basic thing. I like these. This is a little bit thicker one. It's like a 3 mil. They're pretty cheap. We sell tools on our website, but for things that are just like easier to get on Amazon, or I'm not kind of dealing with a distributorship like one of these things, we're not carrying cutting mats. But a thicker cutting mat. The next thing is a punching mat. So we do carry these from CS Osborne. You'll see later, but when we're punching, you don't want to do your punching on this mat because it's going to leave holes in it, and then you're going to have issues cutting. You can use like a plastic cutting board from the kitchen for this step, or you can use a thick piece of leather. If you're doing it a bunch, I suggest getting a cutting mat like that, or a punching mat. Sorry, a pattern knife. Now, what I recommend to start with is just one of these click off, like break off knives. This one's made in Japan by Olfa. And I use this knife on that holster rig, There's maybe a few times where there was some spots where I would have rather had an X-Acto, but I just kind of said, well, I'm going to do it with this one, and it worked out just fine. A finer X-Acto maybe for some smaller radius turns, but at large, this is what I use the most in the shop. Harness needles, okay. So we have not a giveaway, but like a coupon code for you. So I keep the harness needles in this little brass case. You can see the model harness needles that we use. Our kits come with them, but it's a CS Osborne 517-0, I think is the number. But anyways, with the code Wazoo 2020, if you order any of the leatherworking kits from our site and add one of these to your cart, we'll give you one of these cases for free through the end of the month. So Wazoo 2020, and we'll give you one of these little cases.
Just
So
remember,
the harness needles are important. That is bread and butter for the saddle stitch.
Jeb, do they need to add that to their cart, or you throw that in?
I think that's how it works. I think you have to add it to the cart.
Okay.
Somebody will tell us if we're wrong.
Very cool. Thank you for setting that up for us.
Yeah, it'll be cool. I just thought that these were like, we had a bunch of these, and I thought, well, that'd be a cool thing. We're talking about tools and kind of essentials, and so harness needles. If you buy one of the kits come with the harness needles. Waxed poly thread. So this is from Main Thread Company. Most of our kits are a 3-strand or 2-strand, and so that's 0.030 inch or 0.035 inch for the thicker stuff. So that's one option. These guys are great. It's like a 3rd generation U.S. company in Maine. And then I also use this tiger thread. This stuff is wound. So it's thick strands that are wound, or not super thick, but strands that are wound and waxed, and they move through the holes easily because of the wax. This is a braided product, so it just behaves a little differently, but they're both great. I really like the Main Thread. That's what we use in all the kits. So that's wax poly. A scratch awl. These are cheap. They're super functional. You can use them to trace a pattern. So we're going to be doing that later in the demo, so I'll show you that. But also to open up holes, generally you can kind of you can make holes with them. I wouldn't recommend doing that a ton, but if you need to in a pinch, you can. But you can open up your stitch holes with them, and you can trace patterns and then cut. That's a scratch awl. We have those on our site.
Jeb,
now a stitch groover.
Are there different sizes of scratch awls?
No, that's
Okay.
just a one kind of deal. Like, it's very, very simple. I think they're like $7 on our site or something. Like, that's the cheapest thing around. But you'll just use it for a long time. This is a more complicated conversation, but it's like when you're going to set your stitches, you need to set a line, right? And so this is what's called a wing tool. And so I'm left-handed, so if you can see this. So I'm scribing a line with this. I've got one writing the edge and one scribing the line. And so that's what I use to set stitch grooves. And that's what I use making that rig. I can't remember how much these are on the site. They're probably like $45, $50 or something. So that's kind of a big investment. And so what I invented was this little disc that I call the slicker groover. And so I cut these on the laser, and then in the kits that need them, it does a few things. It has different width stitch line or groovers, and then it also has these holes, which we'll talk about in a sec. But if I want to set a 3/16 line for my stitching, then I can just use this disc to set that line. And so that comes in the knife case kit, obviously, where you're punching your own holes. So, I save you some money there. You're not going to use this forever because you really aren't going to want to go through complex turns with this. But for straight runs, and just to get an idea, to have a straight line, we got you covered there. Or you go with something like a wing tool, or they make a few other tools to do that same thing. But that's setting grooves. Stitching chisels. These are essential. I made a little case for mine. These are the ones that we have on the site, and that we recommend. Just economical. It's made in the U.S. It's CS Osborne. They come in different widths, different number of tongs. but that's a stitching chisel. And so, you know, after we'd drawn that groove, we would, you know, set these in the groove and then make our stitch holes. So that's an essential. All right, let me keep going here. So we've got stitching chisels. Obviously, we have a mallet. So you're going to have to drive the stitching chisels with something. I don't recommend using a hammer for too long because it's just hard on your tools. But a wooden mallet. This is a simple one that we sell. They're inexpensive and they weigh about, you know, you're pushing close to 2 pounds is what you want. You don't want something too light. It needs some heft. And then we have some that are, you know, 3 pounds because you're really driving a big punch or something. All right, we're getting real close to the end of the essentials. Let me see. So the slicker and some sandpaper. So like I had to do quite a bit of sanding on that holster rig, mostly on the, you know, on this edge that I was trying to get all flat and pretty. So 150 grit sandpaper. And then this is a slicker tool for burnishing. So once you get to the end of your project and you want to make the edges look all smooth like you've seen, you'll use a tool like this. We invented one just so that we wouldn't have to put another tool in the kit or you didn't have to buy one. So this slicker groover tool, you can round these little gaps out with a piece of sandpaper and then use those for your slicker. And then, you know, that works really well for certain types of pieces. And I've found, you know, when we have them both in classes in the shop that people actually like to use these. I have some other ways I do it as well. There's a lot of info out there on burnishing, but definitely got to have one of those. And then some saddle soap. You know, this is a saddle soap that we use. It's the Phoebing's yellow, and it's relatively inexpensive. And you just use that for a burnishing agent. You know, we use that in the skirting kits. We apply this with some water and a rag as the last step, and that gives it this kind of antique finish and protects the leather. So we use that a lot. The Smith stuff is really nice, leather balm. Now, I wouldn't do a whole surface necessarily in it because it's got a lot more wax content. But if you're kind of like touching something up that's already been finished, this stuff's great, and it smells awesome, and it's organic, and it's great. So, and then a lighter. You're just gonna need a lighter to melt the ends of your thread. And so that is kind of the essentials. I do have a few other things that I think are important, and so I've got kind of a mess going here. But I'm going to walk through a couple other tools and show what they do, because I think, you know, for fit and finish, there's a few more things you might want to consider. This one isn't fit and finish. This is, oh, I just left this one off. This is essential. So you need a set of bag punches. The punch that comes, or sorry, belt punches. Bag punch is something different. This is a belt punch. So this comes in the kit, the belt kit. This is the number 6 or the 3/16. This is the perfect size for like a nice heavy duty belt. If you were making a dog collar, like this one we made for our little dog, you'd want to use maybe the next size down. But this is handy. They're inexpensive. They're around $10 each, maybe a little less per chisel. This is the K245. If people are interested, I can get these on the website, but we do sell them as part of the kit. So that's important. Okay, so that was a lot. I hope that gave you a good idea what things are used for and what you need. Just a few more things, and then we'll get to the demo. So an edge beveler. So you get to a point where when you're burnishing, you want to kind of bevel this edge. This is totally not necessary. I think I could have made that whole cowboy rig and never done this once, and it probably still would look awesome. But this is what an edge beveler does. If you can see on the close-up, I'm just taking this left-handedness. I'm taking this edge, and I'm just walking along it, and just taking that little bit off. And then when I burnish it, it's already rounded over, and that's just it's a really nice detail. So that's an edge beveler. The edge creaser. This is a detail tool. I'm a lefty. I think this is easier to use as a righty, but I like this edge detail where I'm basically just putting this groove, and it's really close to the edge, but it's just this kind of detail that, if you can see that well, it's just this really nice edge detail. And I like to use that in a lot of projects. So that's a handy tool. That's called an edge creaser, and we do have those on the site. A bone folder. This is like the little tool that you use to erase your little mistakes. Is one of the uses for it. So, you know, if I have a mark, I can kind of work it out with this a little bit, and kind of clean it up. The other thing I can do with this is I can take those lines that I just made, and I can use the tip of it and really crease that. So like with this rig over here, I spent a lot of time making those lines deeper, and I use this tool. And then you kind of get into snap setting and other hardware tools, skiving tools. Skiving, this is a skiving knife, and you'd use that to kind of make an edge thinner, so that when you sewed two things together, they weren't as bulky. I'd say that's like a level 3, but I just wanted to show you that kind of tool. And the last thing I'll mention is just after you kind of are doing a lot of your own stitch hole work, this kind of stitching awl with a little bit sharper and a little bit wider blade than that scratch awl is really handy for opening up the holes. I didn't use it on the holster rig, but I really wanted to in a few instances, because I was going through a 1/2 inch of leather. Okay, so that is kind of my essentials, and then a few more than the essentials. And like I said, once you have the basics and that sort of kit, you can make kind of anything, and then go from there. I didn't go through any tooling stuff like stamps and those sorts of things. I think those are pretty self-explanatory. Are there any questions there before we move on?
Looks like there is one, Nick, if you want to answer that, and I got my own personal question too.
Yeah. Bosch of Bushcraft was just asking if you have to ever resharpen the edge beveler, and if so, how would you do that?
Yeah, if you have to resharpen the edge beveler, there are some jigs out there that people sell. I think is the primary way to do it. I also have little stones that have an angle on them that I can sharpen them with. The other thing to note on this is you're rubbing it across leather a lot, and so these feet get really sharp over time. And so just if you're using one of these, don't shove it into your hand. That's.
My question, Jeb, was of the essentials that you have laid out there. I think there was only 1 or 2 things that you actually don't sell on your website. Is that true?
Yeah, and as I was going through this process for you guys, I think I just kind of need to get all that stuff in stock. There's really not much that I went through that we don't have, but yeah, there's a couple things. Like I think I should carry that full belt punch kit.
Yeah.
Although if you buy the templates and the belt case, you end up with one of them. But yeah, the rest of it we pretty much either include with the kits or we sell on the site.
If someone wanted to go on your website right now and they were like, okay, I want the essentials kit, I want just the basic get me out the door and get rocking and rolling kit, like they've already done maybe some of your kits.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I don't remember this on the website, but do you have a kit that has all the different ones kind of combined in it yet?
No, I haven't done the buy everything, but that's several people lately have been doing that since we kind of started adding more tools, where they've made a few things and then they basically are just going to the tools and hardware section, and there's not really anything but what I just described in the tools and hardware section. So, and it's only a page or 2 long, so you could kind of go through and pick the most of that stuff off there. And then I have the same kind of descriptions for what they're for in the tools and supply section of the site, which is separate from the kits.
Right. Okay. I think someone said that even here. Someone said definitely add the toolkits.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd want that.
And so,
yeah, I'm excited. I think it's really fun to kind of build out kits around the tools as well. So I know that we'll do another version of Journal at some point where you're stitching all the holes, and then we'll probably do a version where you're cutting out the pieces as well. We're going to get to a point in this where, like, you know what you're doing, and so you're basically buying leather and patterns. But you know, there's a lot of people to try and get to that point. So I just feel like it's a fun endeavor, and I think has a lot of potential upside for folks. So,
right.
Cool.
Jeb, we just covered a lot of tools and concepts, but in general, if you were going purely for function with very limited aesthetic starting out, what the bare minimum tools, it sounds like you need a knife.
You need a knife. You need some sort of mallet. You probably could use a hammer if you didn't care too much about your tools, and then you'd need a stitching chisel, and you'd need a way to make a mark so that you could keep that straight. Right.
I assume the needles for stitching too.
Needles and thread. Right. Okay. So yeah, I mean, a lot of this is about making it look right and making everything like. Here's the deal: is I think that it's one thing to make a first project and have it like not land quite right, and it's another thing to kind of get there progressively and build that confidence so that, you know, you don't like get upset at the beginning and say, oh, this just looks terrible, I'm not going to be able to do this. Well, you can buy all that stuff and you can still not have the kind of basic techniques down, but if you work your way into it, it's not particularly complicated. Like, it's like anything else where you just have to understand what materials you're working with, you have to understand how to use your tools, and then you just have to, you know, carry it through. Have an attention to detail.
Even going through the steps of making one of these kits, you end up with an appreciation for the amount of time and effort that goes into any individual product, especially after you go back and burnishing edges and all these little detailed things, and not even getting into the stamp work or whatever at the end and the fine details of it, but all the little steps that go into the process to make a nice, consistent item in the first place. Just, it gives a true appreciation for people that do this all the time.
Yeah. And I also think that once you have put that effort in, like the journal, I don't know how many times we made those. There's like, you put 5 or 6 or 10 revs into something, and then you get it right, and then you can make it more, you know, reliably and repeatedly. So like the expectation that you're going to get a bunch of tools and not use other people's patterns, and get it right and looking right the first time, like that's, I mean, you might get lucky, but I think, you know, if you get some of the essential tools, you know, use some patterns that are available out there. This bag is an adaptation of a pattern that I didn't know how it was going to turn out, so I picked the ugliest side in the shop, and this is called Ugly Betty. But I took somebody else's pattern, I made a few tweaks to it, and just sort of proved that, okay, yeah, this is good. Now I'll refine that and make it my own, you know. And the holster rig is a similar kind of thing. Like, that was fun to make. I learned some things. I'm going to make it a little differently next time. So, all right. So here's the deal. I'm making a Father's Day present. We are pretty long on time, guys. How do you want me to handle that?
I think we got to do it. Just got to do it.
Okay. I'm going to take some shortcuts. There's going to be some magic that happens.
Some live.
Yeah, so we're going to make this belt kit. These belts are great. I've made them with a lot of people. They turn out looking awesome, and they're a lot of fun, and people just get to wear them every day. And I think that there's some real pride in that. So I'm going to make one here for my dad for Father's Day. I haven't made him one yet. So we're just going to use the parts that are in the kit. I'm going to cheat in a couple ways, but I'll tell you what I'm doing when I do it. Yeah.
Roll with it. Go as fast as you normally would, and just kind of walk it through as you're doing it. You don't have to explain things too much as you go.
Cool. All right. So the kit comes with these 2 templates, one for the buckle end and one for the strap end. So we start with the buckle end. We're going to make a custom fit belt. I will show you how to do that. So I'm going to take my scratch awl, and I'm going to draw this end on. And tell me if this close up is.
Let me switch you.
Is working. So I just took the scratch awl and I drew the shape of the end on. And then I'm taking this punch and my hammer, my maul I put away. And I've got all the holes laid out already. And I'm just going to tap. I'm not going all the way through the leather. I'm just setting the holes deep enough that when I pull this jig away, that I've got enough of a recess to seat the punch in. Getting stuff straight, I think, is the key to things looking good.
Yeah, if you have a pattern right now, you would be there with calipers or measuring tape, going from 4 different sides, trying to get them all equally distanced. It would take forever.
Yeah, and you could print out something on a piece of paper and get close to this, but you know, that thing just holds. It's made for that tool. It holds the tool in the right position. So now I'm just going to go ahead and punch those. We've got our lighting issue, but I got it.
You have a left hand issue. Your hand keeps cutting.
Yeah, I think he forgot to tell us we were setting up all the cameras.
So these two in the middle for the, I always forget what it's called. Dustin, you had a name for that? Is it the tang or the, I forget what the middle of the buckle?
Yeah, they call it tongue, I believe.
Tong tang. So we punch 2 holes at the end for that with the belt punch, but we're going to connect them to make that oval opening. I have a punch that does the same thing, an oblong punch, but you know, that's an expensive punch. So what I did is I punched those out, and now I'm going to use my scratch awl. I forgot one thing in the essentials list, which is just a straight edge, but that seemed kind of obvious, so I forgot it. So I'm gonna line up. I line up my straight edge, but I'm gonna line it up so that I can draw where I can see the holes. That's kind of a common mistake, is to line up sort of straight but not be able to see the holes, and then you really don't know if you're getting it straight. So I just knocked those out. I'm gonna take my knife. If I haven't sharpened it lately, I'll break it off and make it sharp. I'm gonna cut that in a few passes.
So you're just going a little bit of depth at a time, full length?
Yeah, it's kind of like a chop saw where maybe you want to set, you want to kind of set that line and then go in, so you just kind of know where you're at versus going all the way in, and then you kind of have a groove to follow. So I will, I'll clean that up a little bit later, but you know, that's where we need it to be. So now I got this this arc to cut. I'm gonna cheat, and I'm gonna use a punch for that. But
you would just use a knife in most, if you're.
I would just use a knife for that, and it would turn out great. I just. Okay.
Boom.
Boom. All right. So here's the deal. We're going to take and we're going to custom fit this belt. And it's for my dad. You probably want to go wide angle again. What do I do with those? Here's the hardware. So I got these Chicago screws, and we buy these in bulk from Buckle Guy. They do really nice hardware. I got nothing but good things to say about the hardware that I've got there. So we got these Chicago screws. So it's a, if you don't know what that is, it's looks like a rivet, but it's got threads on one side. And this is a great option for joining things. That's what I joined that holster to the rig with. So what we would do is we would take this, and you got to go wide angle on it. I'm not going to do it right now because I'm not the same size as my dad. But what you do is you put it through your belt loops. You have to do that because you have to know where your belt hits. And you're going to put a mark where the tang hits. And that's going to be the center hole. So you have the perfect size. So that in the long form video tutorial, you know, we walk you through that.
video,
I know that I'm a size 34 and he's got to be 33.
So when you get the kit, in this particular kit, you also have a video that comes with it too, huh?
Yeah, most of them. You know, we started with written instructions, and I illustrated every stitch, and that's very onerous, and you know, so we just started doing video, and people seem to like that. So I know that end to end, for me, and these templates, I'd go with 44 inches for a 34 waist. What do you think he's a 30? He's like probably a 33. Okay, so I'm gonna go 43 inches is where I'm gonna mark this one, and I think that'll be perfect. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take the other end of this, and I had two options in the kit. There's the English tip, which I kind of prefer, and then there's the round tip, which also looks good. So I'm gonna do English tip on this one. At my mark, what I would have done is I would have marked the center hole, and then had this land at the very center hole on the mark that we made on the buckle, and then I would have done the cut. That's one of my cheats I have to do right now. So I'm just going to use this knife and follow this template and cut this end. I also think that the English tip is easier to cut because I can follow the line of the wood in a little bit more fluid manner. I also like these knives because you can extend the blade a little bit longer if you've got a template you're working with. So that's my cut. I'm going to sand that a little bit. I'm going to cut the very tip off because I don't want it to be that pointy. And then I'll come back and clean that up a little later. And now I'm going to use this template, line it up with the end. We're going to come back on top of our punching mat. All right, so same deal here. Now with this template, I've set it up and I've put the names of the tools on there. That if you're doing it in really thick leather, you want to use an oblong punch. But in this sort of 10 to 12, I think we're still good with the circle. So I'm just going to, again, mark those.
And the oblong, so it lays flatter where the tongue sticks through?
Correct, yeah. If you've got a really thick belt, like like a fireman's belt or that kind of thing, you just you'd want to use the oblong. I mean, it just lays a little bit flatter. Like those belts that I made for you guys, I think we did oblong punches. You can use the oblong in the thinner stuff too. Anyways, I set the template up so you could do it both ways. All right, so I got my marks. We're going like pretty fast here, and we've got a functional belt, like I think pretty much already. And then we're just going to do some detail work to clean it up. Let me quick get that one. Do some detail work to clean it up. I'm going to show you a burnishing hack. And that burnishing hack, like I figured it out like in the last week or two. And I'm just kind of surprised that more people aren't burnishing the way that I figured out. So I'll show you that because I think it's pretty awesome. Cool.
If you're not sure on his waist size, you could always just kind of line up a couple of those holes and add more there, right?
If I got it wrong.
Well, if you just wanted to add more adjustability holes, yeah, if you're really uncertain as to what size it is.
Yeah, I mean, the goal with this kit is to build like a belt. If you can go to the wide angle, I want to hit hole 4 or close to it so that this keeper and this line up right, and it's just like the perfect fit. I was a little hasty with my knife work. I'm looking for some sandpaper to fix that. Owen, can you find me some sandpaper? It's in that drawer over there. All right, so I'm gonna fix up that tip a little bit once Owen gets me some sandpaper. So now we're really to the point where we can burnish. So I could assemble this and it's a functional belt right now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to burnish, and I'll just use the Smith stuff because its ingredients are cocoa butter, beeswax, and almond oil. And so it smells really good. And this is Scotch Brite. So this is my hack. So Scotch Brite is it's a mild abrasive, and we use these to apply the stains, this wood wax oil stain that we do in our wooden knife kits. And the other day, I just happened to pick some up and I tried to burnish with it, and it works amazing. So all I'm doing is holding it and applying the wax product and working it back and forth. The same thing works well with the other saddle soap that we use, but if I just kind of work this for a while and I can work my way around, then I'll end up with really beautiful smooth edges. And there's a little bit of abrasive in this Scotch Brite. It's enough that I can probably get some of these. Did we get the sandpaper? It's in that drawer right there, right below that stipend sheet. To the right. In any case, with saddle soap and that Scotch Brite, you just end up with these really beautiful, I don't know if we can see it in the close-up, really beautiful edges. Now, if I was going kind of all out with this belt, I would also use some edge detail, perhaps with this creaser tool. I might come back and do that for my dads. And then I would also probably, although this is looking really good without it. Oh, thank you. So, this is how you fix your little, like your little mistakes. Like, that's not the best looking cut. I was rushing it. But if I come back here and I'm just working it, this is 220. So it takes a little bit longer. I think 150 is the perfect fit for this. But I can get that shape to do what I want relatively quickly. It's funny, if you look at production belts, after you've made a few of these, you'll notice some things. I think that's the case with all like detail work like this. That's why I think having a craft and working with your hands is important, because you develop an eye for things. And you'll look at something on the shelf and you'll say, why is that tip so crooked? Like, yeah, on an $80 belt, like, let's straighten that out. Anyway, so I think I got that looking pretty good now. Okay, so we might do that, the edge beveling. We might put some detail work in it.
Well, since this is a gift for your dad, I don't want to rush you or make you do anything. So you've kind of covered the functional aspect of it here,
yep,
as far as making a belt. So if you wanted to just kind of wrap it up there,
I will. Let me just get it functional, and then I'll come back later and make it.
Okay.
Do the finish work. So I've got these Chicago screws.
But essentially, you'd go around and you'd burnish the whole edge, and or do any other prep or post work that you wanted to, decorative type stuff. That's
right. We have one more piece to make though, and I want to show you that real quickly.
Okay.
And then we can wrap it up. So we'll put our Chicago screws in. That thing's totally functional. I could spend a bunch of time on that. Like, that was rushed, but like if you sat around the table with a bunch of your friends making these, which I've done, like you could spend a few hours and come up with your own way to kind of do your line work, and then have some stamps that you kind of work with, and that's a lot of fun. But what we need to make, and the jig has a mark on it. This is kind of funny, but you cut a piece that's from this notch to the end and a 1/2 inch, and that's going to be the keeper. And this will give you just a quick idea of what some of the stitch work might look like in some of the other projects. So I'm just going to I'm going to mark a 1/2 inch and 1/2 inch. I'm just going to use this for my straight edge. Okay. Now, the way that this guy works is I'm just going to wrap him around, fold that over, so that we know what 2 layers feels like, I'm going to take my scratch awl, mark that. I'm going to cut that off. I'll take my stitching chisel. This is the 2-prong. I could use the scratch awl too to poke these holes. You know, like that would be the way to do it if you didn't have a stitching chisel. I would do the same edge treatments I did on the main belt if I was going to do some nice lines, etc. Then I'll sew that together with this thread, the wax poly.
You butt it up against itself just flush, or is it overlapping when you sew it?
It's flush. So the way that I do it is, let's see on that close up. So I cut it based on that mark, and then they just butt together flush.
Okay.
And
nice.
Yeah, and it looks great. It works great, and then it goes in between these rivets here. Some folks like do a decorative stitch and put the stitch outward. Some folks put it inward. The thing that you know I've been doing for you guys, I wanted to show this. So this is just a fun tool that's a stamp, and you know we put these maker's marks on there. So that's the yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So then I would fold that back up, sew it, and then I've got the wazoo on the keeper. So I made a big mess. That went fast. I hope you got something out of it. I hope the one thing you got out of it is that's not all that hard, and that belt will sell for 75. It depends, you know, on the maker, but 65 to 90 bucks. You know, I'm going to put some more work into it to get it very clean, etc. But like, we did that really quick. We sell a refill for this with the hardware and more leather for 29 bucks, right? So you can make that belt for somebody else for a very small amount, and then you can use those same concepts to make other things, right? So once you kind of have that process figured out, then you can apply it to other things.
And if somebody was looking to do this as a business or something,
yeah,
you could do that. I assume there's power burnishers or something.
Oops.
Yeah, we just got caught up in the feed. Yes, we have a big burnishing machine in the background. There's jigs, there's burnishing machines, there's ways to kind of power through. I'd say that coming up with something that's really efficient just takes time, and you have to figure out for which project which way you want to do it. I kind of find that doing things by hand sometimes goes faster than the burnishing machine. But yeah, just practice and you'll figure out what works for you.
Cool. Well, if people have questions or they're looking to get into the leatherworking stuff, we can send them to TogetherMade.com. Posted the link there once. What do you have any other resources that you recommend as far as knowledge or finding more information, learning more about it?
Well, I mean, I think YouTube is like the place to go for anything. There's some good builders out there. There's some great guys on Instagram that are willing to talk and share tips. And I've found that the community at large is real welcoming. So as you kind of get in and you're like, have you seen this kind of stitch before? What do you think about it? You know, I've sent those kind of instant messages to people on Instagram, and they've been real welcoming. So I think that YouTube, Instagram are great resources. If you have any questions, you can shoot me a message on Instagram. And then we did have a giveaway. Do you guys want to announce that?
Yeah. So I think the giveaway we all agreed upon is you did a recent post. Our belt on it, or a picture of a belt, a leather belt that has some wazoo stuff on it. And and we'll probably reiterate this too. I might do some other posts on Instagram because this is towards the end. We probably should have said this at the beginning, but if anyone's towards the end, here's the deal. If you want to win a free belt kit from TogetherMade, the way this giveaway is going to work is that you need to follow TogetherMade on Instagram, like that post. It's a recent post, just posted up today. If you're seeing this later on, obviously look back in the post and look for that belt picture, and then comment on the post with your favorite bushcraft/survival skill, and that will enter you in. And then Jeb will draw somebody, maybe like a week or something. I think that's what you were talking about.
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Cool. And we'll let everyone know about that, and then whoever wins that will get a belt kit to make their own.
All right, guys. Well, thanks again for having me. That was a lot of fun.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jeb. We appreciate it. And I think you'll be seeing a lot more of Jeb's work continually with Wazoo too, as we continue to work together. Yeah. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, Jeb. And we'll see you guys in the next video next week, probably Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Again, we'll have some more stuff going on, and we'll keep refining these. And if you got any ideas, send them to us, what you want to see, what you want to learn, experts you want to learn from, all that fun stuff. So this was Leatherworking, and go visit Jeb at TogetherMade.com, get your kits, and we'll see you guys in the next video.
Nice out, Nick.
Bye.
Yeah.